What's up, guys? Welcome to the next part of the Hack and Slash tutorial series. In this tutorial series, we're going to set up a base enemy AI and a dummy so we can start attacking them, play the correct hit animation. The only issue is that it's currently not rotating the right position. We'll fix that later once we get a targeting system up and running. We currently just have this dummy so we can test out all our other functionality, our other combat functionality before we start implementing AIs that can attack us back. And so this AI, pretty simple, plays the animations, takes damage, and it dies. So once it dies, collision is all disabled, can no longer take any more damage. Just pretty much setting up all the base functionality. I'm going to show you how you can use parent-child classes to your advantage, and so I highly recommend you exploring that and expanding that with your weapons. So you have child and parent class weapons, share the functionality, have a base character class and have them share functionality, and so it's quite a useful tool to use in coding. So if you guys want this project files, join me on Patreon. Without further ado, let's get started. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the next part of the Hack and Slash tutorial series. Last tutorial video we worked on weapon collisions, so all our weapons currently now have collision. And so in this video we're going to start working on a dummy AI so we can start applying damage, taking damage, and start figuring out all that other good stuff for when we start making actual AIs who can damage the player. We have all the functionalities all set and ready to go. So let's just start off by making a new folder. It's going to call this AIs or enemies, and we're going to make a character blueprint class, and we'll call this BP_base enemy. And so inside the base enemy, it's gonna contain all the base functionality, and so any functions or functionality or mechanics that all enemies share, we'll keep them in this blueprint. And if some enemies have unique abilities or unique mechanics, we can add them separately. That way, not all enemies require those functions. It's a lot more optimal. And so the first thing I'm going to do is actually copy the buffer system that I made in a couple videos ago. So let's close all these other tabs. This function here, this event, which basically just push the enemy forward or backwards simply with this input. And so it's going to be very useful. We can just copy and paste this here. Everything's the same, so nothing to worry about here. Now the next thing we're going to do is start implementing the take damage event. So there's a event called any damage. Event any damage. Simply this function just, and if any type of damage is applied, this function will be called. Now inside the player, we did make a function to apply damage. So draw open collisions. If it's true, we check if the hit actor is valid, and then we apply damage. Alright, so when we apply damage, we have the damage type class, which is of type BP damage type main. We have our damage and then our controller. First things first, we're going to grab our damage type and we're going to cast it to our BP damage type main. And if the cast fails, we do nothing. But if the cast is valid, we're going to get that take damage or damage type variable. So inside our damage type main, we have this variable called damage type. We're going to read the values in it. So right here, we're going to get damage type. We're going to get that variable, and we're going to read whatever's in here to get the correct animation montage, play the right montage, and whatnot. Of course, we're going to need a bit of health system. So let's make that really quick. I'm thinking about how I should implement this. So right here in our player, we're going to also need some health. But I kind of want to make this health system maybe dynamic. Or we can just eyeball it and just make a variable. I think that's what we're going to do. So we're just going to make a variable called health. Make this a float. And then we can just compile and set it to some value. Now right here, we can do this in a bunch of different ways. We can either take the damage first and check if the player is dead, or like if the health is below 0. And if it is, we just die instead of playing the hit reaction. Or we can just play the hit reaction and then do the check afterwards. And if the enemy is indeed dead, then we we would just cancel the hit reaction animation and play the death animation. So maybe we can just do it like this. If we can just do the check here. Subtract our health from subtract the amount of damage to our health. So let's pull this down here. And then we're going to do a set where we set our health. Set health. So this can go all the way out here. So we're going to set our health to whatever the damage is subtracted by our current health. And then we're going to do if it's less than or equal to 0, then we'll do a branch. And if it is true or not, maybe we can do a not. So if it is greater than, if it is greater than 0, then we will simply do the hit reaction. If not, we're gonna make another custom event called death, or we can actually make a function. Let's make a function. So here, perform death, and we'll figure this out later. For now, we're just gonna call the function perform death. And if we are greater, if our current health is greater than if the current health is greater than 0, then we'll just play the hit reaction. Now, if your enemy can block, then of course we're gonna have to modify the system because we don't want to take damage first. But since I don't have plans for an enemy to block, I think I'm just gonna settle with this here. And so right here we can either make a function or yes, let's make a function, and we're gonna make a function called perform hit reaction, and then we're gonna make another function called get hit reaction. Similar to our character, we should have a get hit reaction montage. We're simply just gonna copy all of this and just paste them here. Make a selection here, bam. This would be damage type, and then we're going to make this a peer function. We're going to create variable. We don't want to create local variable, we want to create a variable. So just create a variable and not a local variable. Right here and right here. Now in our player, we simply just took the damage, right? So if we get hit reaction montage, do we have a take damage event here? Let's see, find references. So we do have a take damage, so it's in our damage EG, and we simply cast it, get the montage, set our state, and then just took the damage. I guess that's how we can do it with our player, with our enemy, so we don't need this perform hit reaction. But if you like a bit more nicer code, probably consider. So we're gonna get the hit reaction, plug this in. We're gonna check if this is valid. If it is valid, then we want to set our state, and we don't have a state machine here, so let's make that as well. Similarly, we're gonna need a set state, get state, and is current state equal to any. I think I could just copy all of the functions. So I'll just copy all this functionality here, make a function called set state, paste this in, goes here, current state, we're going to promote to variable, and then we're going to set like that. Then our input is going to be new state. Now get state is quite simple, basically return our current state, so just return node. Plug this in. I'm just going to rename this to a return value, make this a pure function. Now we're also going to copy that is current state equal to any. It's quite simple as well. So we're going to is current state equal to any. Paste that in here. Make this an input. States to check. Then we're going to return. As you can see, I'm copying a lot of these functions, and what you should understand or realize by now is that we should have just made a base character class, so we don't actually have to copy any code. So if you guys want to do that and make much nicer code, more optimal code, I recommend making like a child class and have these base functionality like state machine, health, stats, all the things that every character would need into a base character class. And so you could just make child classes and add their own unique functionality. It's what I highly recommend, but since this is trying to keep things very basic here, I'm not going to go that far. So we got our state machine now. We're going to set our state to disabled, and then we want to play montage. Anim montage. And then we're just going to play this animation montage right here. Plug this in. Awesome. Now we're going to compile. Let's organize this. State. And this one's going to be damage. Damage. Health is going to be in this category called stats. All of this is going to be in damage. Damage, 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 and this is going to be in states. Boom. Nice. Nice and organized. Okay, so we take damage, and then we have our death. So let's try making a base enemy class first. So let's head over here into our enemies folder, make a child class blueprint, call this BP_dummy. We're going to add the UE for mannequin. We're just going to give it the player locomotion as the enemies share the same skeleton and everything. So I don't have all the animations to make to give these enemies their own locomotion. So I'm just going to eyeball this by just giving them the character locomotion. I'm going to compile everything here, and if you click on the class defaults, you'll see all our variables that we made for our parent class, which is the base enemy, like our health and our animations. So let's give this dummy like a lot of health so we don't kill it. And let's check on the character. Damage should be 1, okay, so we won't kill this enemy. And now what we will want to try to do is test to see if our take damage function is working. So right here on the not valid, we're going to print string. And then we're going to say enemy hit reaction is not valid. And now if we save, drop one of this bad boys in. Actually, one more thing. It's regarding collision. So right here in the character mesh collision, we're going to set this custom, and we're going to ignore the camera. And we're going to leave everything else the same. This just prevents the camera from clipping into the enemy. We are supposed to do that to the capsule component as well. Yes, so right here, custom, set that to camera to ignore. Now if we check, character's floating. And, okay, maybe I need to lower the mesh here. Yes, I definitely do. Lower to 90, there you go. Now if I give this a roll, I should get an error saying that the enemy has no montage. There it is. And as you can see, I'm getting a lot of prints. Now that's because our sphere trace is not ignoring the enemy after we collide with them. So once we damage enemy, we're not adding setting a variable saying that, hey, we already damaged this enemy, we shouldn't be damaging it again. And so we'll do that in just a minute. But first thing, let's get some hit reactions first, and then we'll solve that other issue in a minute. Now enemies will also need a reset state, so let's make that 2. Let's make that, so custom event called reset state, and we're just gonna leave it empty for now. Actually, we have a set state, so let's set our state to neutral. It's gonna be very important once we have AIs or AIs that move and attack. It's gonna run solely on this state machine. And so it's important that we always control our states and when we enter and when we exit. Make a new folder in our enemy folder and call it anim notify. We're also going to make an anim notify here, anim notify. Call this am_enemy reset state. Now we're going to receive notify. Going to get owner. Cast this to the base enemy. BP base enemy. And then we're going to call reset state here. So reset state. And then we plug this in on the return value. Make sure this is checked to true. Now we can start finding all our animations. So it's our animations. We should have a couple of hit reactions here. This one is our knockdown. So let's get that. Let's create an montage. This will be am_knockdown. Now we also, since we didn't make the reset state a function that both the player and the enemy can use, eventually once we have enemies that can attack the player, we're gonna have to make another anim notify. So I'm going to rename this to am_enemy knockdown. And so this is only specific to the enemy. Make sure root motion is enabled. And let's add that enemy reset state. So enemies flat on the ground here. We are going to add some recovery animation here at the end. So the reset state isn't going to be here. We're going to have like a recovery animation that we're going to add at the end of this montage. But until then, we're just going to leave like that for now. Now we have air hit reactions. We will cover that once we do aerial combat. For now, we'll just ignore that. Front duel, we have our hit reactions. This one is our left right, or our front right, front left, front middle, and then knock back. So we're going to make an montage for all this. Knock back. Make sure all these have root motion enabled. See, for this one we are also going to have that recovery animation that I was talking about. I don't think I have one. Oh, we do. It's right here. It's called get out sequence. You can add that now. As you can see, there's a bit of like snapping. Once you get into that advanced level of Unreal Engine and coding, you can learn a way to have enemies place animation montages in a sequence, so you can take advantage of this blend in and blend out parts, and so you won't actually get this snapping. Instead, the enemy will blend perfectly in, or you can find an animation that works a lot better. For now, I'm just going to leave at that. So this animation right there, perfect. Now I want to go over to see if the knockdown animation has that ability, because these are from different skeletons. I don't think I'll be able to pull an animation from another pack. So yeah, so I can't pull the animation here. We might need to do retargeting, or we'll have to re-import the animation to this skeleton. Either way, I'll do that in a minute. But for now, let's just get this system down and ready to go. We're gonna open this asset and just find it. This is our left right, so our front right. am_enemy fr. Now I'm not going to add like a back hit reaction for enemies, because it's probably very rare for enemies to get hit from behind, especially in an action game. There are some occasions that can happen, but it's very rare. My idea for AIs is have the AIs always lock onto the player, so as soon as they spawn, they'll find the player and lock onto them. And so if that's the case, the enemy's back should never be turned away or turned behind the player, so the player should never be able to hit the enemy from behind. That is my plan, so that's why I'm not adding a back hit reaction. That's because that idea of enemies always rotating to face the player. So I'm not going to add a back hit reaction just yet. If we do need one, I'll add one in the future. For now, let's just get the front hit reactions, as that's what I have plans for this AIs. Awesome. Now let's add these to our dummy, or yes, our dummy. Right here in class defaults, we can find all of this. Search up enemy. This one is middle, so middle. This is knocked back, knocked down, AHL or left, and front right. Okay, now let's fix that issue where the collisions are hitting multiple times. So right here in the collisions, if we apply damage, you want to add this enemy to a variable. So let me get this. So let's organize this a little bit. This is going to be damage. This is going to be also in damage, not dodge. Damage. Our attack damage is going to be in a category called stats. There you go. So it's a lot more organized. Okay, so we're going to make another variable called hit actors. So hit actors, it's going to be a actor class. So object type actor, and it's going to be an array. So here we're going to add unique. And so after we apply the damage to the enemy, you want to add that actor into our array. We have a reroute pin here, so let's use that. Boom. And now in the beginning, right here, instead of checking if it's just valid, we're going to make a branch. And we're going to check two things. One, if the actor is valid, and two, if the actors have already been hit. So let me straighten that pin out. So here, if it says contains item, and then a not boolean. So if the hit actor is not in the hit actor, or if the hit actor from the hit result is not in the array, then we can attack, make an and boolean here. And if the hit factor is valid. So these two booleans need to be true in order for the branch to execute the true pin. Let me push these out a little bit. Now at the beginning, so when we do the sphere trace, we should clear the actor first. So let's make some reroute pins here. It's looking a bit nicer. Okay, and then here, we're just gonna grab this and call it clear. So this simply just empty out the array. Awesome stuff. So whenever we try to attack, it will clear the hit actor before we fill it up initially. So now let's give that a try. We should get a hit reaction from the enemy now. Yep, so we're getting a hit reaction. So let's see. Now I think I got the... Whoa. Okay, so we have some issues with collisions. Let's see, let's check our weapon. Because our weapon should have a 0 collision. There it is, that's the reason why. So our weapon has collision. So the collision made our enemy flying. So let's disable the collision on our weapon and let's try again. I think the hit reactions are wrong. So as you can see, the character should have played to left. Okay, so... Yep, so the hit reactions are backwards. That means our damage type or our attack notifiers are backwards, so let's fix that. So here it's coming from the right, so we should play the left. Is that how it works? Let's see. So we should be playing the left hit reaction here. There we go. So yes, so we pretty much got it reversed. So this one's gonna have to play the opposite. Coming from the left, we should play the right. This one's coming from the right, so we play the left. This one's in the middle, so that one's fine. And then let's grab our other animations. Heavy, The one's coming from the left or right. Yes, it's coming from the right. Well, it's coming from the left, so we play the right. That should be right. Hold on. Let's give this a test. Maybe not. So let's switch this around. Left. This one should be right. Left. Alright, so it's coming from swinging towards the left. So it's coming from the left down to the right. So we put a left hit reaction. Maybe it's because I'm looking at it in the wrong direction. So probably that's why. Let's see. Knockback should be fine. So let's give this a test, see if it's working. Okay, yeah, so it seems to be alright. Now we need our combo starters and our enders. A bit of stuff to change and modify. Luckily, this one's a knockback, so we should be fine. Now this one is right, this should be left, and this one's knocked down. This one be the right. And right. Okay. Now like combo starters. This one is left. And this one is middle. Okay. Right. This one is left. Now we don't have a targeting system yet, so it's going to be very difficult to see all our attacks land. Once we have a targeting system, it's going to be a lot easier. Okay, so everything's working fine. Gonna tweak some stuff in a minute, but let's get the death working. It seems that the hit reactions are working just fine. I don't see any issues yet. So let's work on the death. And so first thing we're gonna do with the death is we're gonna set our state to death. Alright, and then we want to play a death montage. So play in a montage. And then we're gonna promote this a variable called death. Let's be more specific here, death montage. There you go. Now inside the event, we don't want to be able to take damage if we are in the death state. So is current state equal to any? We're gonna make that a pure function. We're gonna make an array. And then we're gonna add the death state in here. And then a not boolean. And then we're gonna do an and boolean. Then we'll delete this. Pull this out. Grab a branch. Off the true pin, we go here. Off the false pin, we go here. So make this 10, and then make it red. This should be an error. Boom. Pull this out a little bit more. Nice. And then, what else? We're checking if this is valid, so it is valid. Let's pull these out even further. So we can get this looking nice. Awesome. So now if we are dead, the enemy should not play the animation. Now right here, we're gonna do the assets, find my death animation here. Don't think it's in this one, think it's in the sword animation, death. So right here, we're gonna create montage am_ death. Now for this specific montage, like I was saying, this death animation, because we don't need to reset state or anything, we can reuse this animation for both our player and the enemy. So right near the end, I'm going to make a montage section, call it loop, and then we're just gonna loop that part of the animation. And so this is probably not the best way to do it. Typically you would play the animation and then probably go to your animation blueprint and have the locomotion set to this final pose, or better yet, you can just have the character ragdoll. but this is just a very simple way. Most action games just have the enemy probably disintegrate or disappear, dematerialize, whatever it is. This is probably not how action enemies would die, but it's just very simple system. So we can actually add this to our enemy. Go to our dummy, search for our death montage. So in our base enemy, right here in our perform death, we have a death montage. And then we need to compile this because this death montage should be available here. It's right here, death montage. So here we can just search for death. Bam. Now for our health, we'll set this to 1. And so if we damage the enemy, I want to see if the enemy will die. Yep, so the enemy dies. Obviously, obviously the collisions are still there. So it's a simple fix. We just disable all collisions. So head over to the base enemy. After we perform our animation, I want to grab a capsule. I want to enable collision or set collision enabled to no collision. We also want to do that with the mesh as well. So set collision enabled, and we're going to set no collision as well. Now once we add weapons, we're going to also have the weapons have no collision by default. So in the engine, once we have weapons, in the preset we're going to have no collision, so we don't have to do this for our weapons, but for our mesh and capsule component we do. So now if I kill the enemy, should go right through him. Yep. Right, no collision, nothing. Now enemy should not be able to take any more damage. Perfect. So with that, I think we are at a good stopping point. We implemented the take damage function for our enemies. Our apply damage seems to work just fine. This take damage function, we can probably copy over later for our player. But for now, we can just leave for now as we don't need this check. We don't need a check to check. Actually, yeah, so it's all working just fine. We will need to still implement the apply damage for the enemies, but we can do that once we have actual AIs that need to be damaged. For now, we just need an enemy we can actually hit and possibly kill. Once we start implementing AIs, that's when we have to do all the other complex stuff. So in the next couple videos, we're going to expand on our functionality, our combat system. We're going to probably implement targeting, soft locking, finishers, aerial combat, and all that good stuff before we head on to AIs and having them move and attack us. So without further ado, see you guys in the next one.